Well, you know, fear is easier to market than facts, right? And the point is that we have a fundamental problem of economic literacy in this country. So this simple thing that I keep talking about, which is look at risk, look forward, don't look back, look forward. That's one of the basic elements of economics. We are always thinking about, we think what was done yesterday is sunk cost. We don't worry about it. We look forward. What are the options before us? And the real issue is, unless we invest, we cannot have development. Unless we invest and take risks, we cannot make profits, right? So instead of that, we have this other mentality, which is of this strange metaphor that I don't know where it came from, selling the family silver. So this idea, you know, family silver is sitting here, it doesn't make any money, it's not an investment property, it's just sitting in our cupboard, and then we sell it. Now that is a completely wrong analogy. But our people, because perhaps economic illiteracy, we accept this model. That's the one that resonates with the people who believe in this rubbish, right? So if we, for example, and then we can go back. When Sri Lanka Telecom was privatized, right? We sold 35% of one of the largest government establishments. Same story was told. Now today nobody is worrying about it, nobody's getting excited about it. The Japanese didn't take the company away. The Malaysians own it, they have taken the company away. And the company is not a burden to the treasury, it is actually making money, right? It is supporting our economy. So all these good cases, SAGT was a success.
Exactly.
When it was done, it was considered some kind of selling the family silver, right? But you have to invest. I mean, there's a story with the oil tanks. The oil tanks in Trincomalee have been there for God knows how many years, more than 75 years. They have been there, unused, rusting. And somehow, this is family silver, right? If you have rusting stuff in your house,
why not
you
use
don't
it?
consider it family silver, you invest in it, and you make a business out of it.
Professor, with regard to one point, if I may with respect disagree, you said we shouldn't look to the past. I'd like to draw your attention to an RTI request that we made from the Ministry of Development Strategies and International Trade with regard to a set of events that had taken place in the past, during the past few months, with regard to confirmation that the Agency for Development, which was involved in drafting the framework treaty with regard to the Hambantota Port Agreement, whether it's a state body, what its standing was. The response comes as follows. It says, Agency for Development is one of the state institutions proposed to be established under the Development Special Provisions Bill. The Cabinet has approved the bill and subsequently presented to Parliament, but Parliament's sanction for the bill is pending. And it says the Agency for Development is not yet established. So, proper procedure has not been followed in the past.
I was talking about economics, right? This is a political instrument, right? And I can even tell you more than what's in that RTI request. The issue was that this agency, the way it was drafted, it required the concurrence of all the provinces. And we don't have a mechanism in this country, in our political structure, to get the concurrence of the provinces. One province can hold the whole thing back. So the provinces are not willing to give the concurrence. The thing is stalled. It's dead.
Dr. Disanayak, I want to ask a question from you. Since Professor Samarji was suggesting us to look forward, let's take an example or a hypothetical situation where everything is fine with regard to the Hambantota port. The Chinese 99-year agreement works out, and there are FDIs or people coming into the port to actually do business. We spoke about the Colombo port and the CICT and how traffic comes into the Colombo port. Is this anyway creating a competition between the two ports?
At some stage it will. At some stage it will. And when you have competition, it's always good.
So what happens to the profit that is enjoyed by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority at present?
See, now what you need to understand is that competition is good, is a good thing. and we have no control over competition. And what needs to be done is to come up with the right scale and right level of productivity, and to ensure that you attract the ships that are bypassing Colombo.
So
right?
we have to get our game right as well. You have to get our act right as well.
So our act as well, that is what is happening in Hambantota. As I said earlier, these 3 mega alliances, they got 6 services out of Asia going into Europe. Only 1 service is calling into Colombo. So don't we have the potential of attracting new services?
Do we?
Yes, we do. But then we need to, as I said, CICT in Colombo is already full. JCT is not full, SAGT is also partially full, but the fact is that big ships cannot call these 2 terminals. So we have a shortage of capacity, and if that capacity shortage is going to be answered by Hambantota, what is wrong in that? Do we have the wherewithal and the money to invest?
Yes,
that is exactly what is happening in Hambantota. We have been able to attract a world class, a global player. Whether he's a Chinese, Indian or Japanese, to us it should be irrelevant.
Dr. Dissanayake, let me go down to very common terms. Where does the money go if the ships go to Hambantota, and where does the money go if the ships come to Colombo?
You are asking a question. We are talking about creating incremental value. Ships that are not calling Sri Lanka, if we can attract into Hambantota, why not? As I said, as at today, with big ships, the port of Colombo in layman's language is full. Ships are bypassing Colombo because there is no adequate capacity. If we can develop a world-class capacity in Hambantota, what is wrong in that?
There is nothing wrong. So, where is the money going?
So money is going to come from this company, this vehicle. The vehicle will have to look at...
so if it goes to CICT, 85% to CICT and 15% to the Ports Authority.
And there?
Same here.
So the same story there.
What's the issue? Same story.
The point is that ships that don't land come here, they don't yield anything.
Exactly.
Zero, zilch, no royalties, no dividends, nothing. Right?
Right.
If they come here, there's revenue.
So that competition is good.
Of course.
You see, the end game has changed in this global marketplace. What you have to understand is that.
Right, now Mr.
You expand the pie. That's what he's talking about.
Mr.
Why think
Maskorala,
static pie?
question to you as well. Now, once again, looking at the future, if everything works out well, it's not really easy for the government to say, right, we did the 99-year agreement, there are 0.8 trillion debt burden is, okay, and all of that. But the government has to continue to do things, maybe create a competitive exchange rate. What does the government have to look at in the future now?
I didn't get your question.
What does the government have to look into in the future after this port deal is reached? What does the government have to look into?
Well, on the port side, I think the east terminal in the port of Colombo has to be commissioned very fast, because as he said already, there is a shortage of berths and there is the volumes coming in. Some of the days ships are having an 8 hour or so staying out kind of a situation. So east terminal is important. But on this question of competition, now, I have a problem. I told you at the moment, because if China starts within next 1.5 years a transshipment facility there, the region doesn't generate that amount of volume for that capacity. So there will be a price war and a situation that might create some problems. But on the other hand, China also has put a condition that 100 kilometers within Hambantota you can't build competition. That kind of a thing has been rolled out yesterday, I saw on news. So I have a reservation on that. If Colombo has 2 more terminals to come in, that is West Terminal and the East Terminal. So when those 2 come, that's each with design capacity of 2.4 million. I think each of these terminals can go up to 3.8 million operational capacity if they are properly managed. So if China puts a terminal in Hambantota, some of these ships that are coming to Colombo will go to Hambantota. So Colombo also has investments, loans, breakwater is built by the public of this country. So we have to pay those. So I am a bit worried about that kind of a situation where we are creating overcapacity when the region doesn't generate that much of capacity. Now region is expected to double its capacity with India's growth at 7% GDP by about 2030. We will hit about 30 to 35 million TEUs. Then we might have the excess of having cargo there and here, and the final call will be, as Doctor said, by the shipping lines, which port to go.
Dr. Parakrama, just referring to one of the questions that was raised by Chaturanga to you about where the money is going. There is a difference. Obviously, 85% would go for the Chinese company that is doing the operation in Hambantota, as well as in the CICT case, we all see 85% going to the Chinese company again, which is Colombo International Container Terminals. However, the period is of concern. We know CICT is only for 35 years, the lease agreement, and this is for 99 years. So there is a difference with the term that has been granted, isn't it?
We cannot say it's the same here.
It's the same deal there.
These are two different
absolutely, but how you defined it.
Yeah, so
probably the viewers thought, okay, the same deal, why not then? But we have to bring out to light that this is 35 years and this is 99 years.
Yes, the simple answer there is that the terminal operation, if you check the CICT in Colombo, it was through a bankable feasibility study. It's a bankable investment. Unlike the port of Hambantota, you have CMHI coming and investing also into the breakwater, into the infrastructure, which was not the case in Colombo. You seldom have an investor coming and investing into the port infrastructure. That infrastructure is built by the government. If you take the Colombo South Harbour, just now Rohan mentioned, who built the infrastructure? The government of Sri Lanka. You wouldn't have investors coming and investing into the infrastructure. They came and invested only on the terminal. So that's the basic answer. So as a result, the payback is long. You can't compare the payback of a terminal with the investment that you are making into a port.
Yeah, but
that's the difference.
Agreed, but that's not the same scenario. You cannot apply it, obviously. That's for 99 years and these for 35 years, right, Dr. Parakrama?
The 99 is wrong.
The scenarios are different, but you cannot draw parallels saying, okay, it's 85% goes out, so 15% we get in. CICT same format, 85%, so that's a misconception, I think. We cannot mislead the public. That's why I thought I'd draw parallels.
So that's why I'm saying
35 to 99 years.
So that's
it's a big difference. And Rohan also mentioned that he has a question about this model in which the Hambantota port was on offer.
No, I don't quite agree with that, because there's basically any investor will not induct surplus capacity unless you are the government. Unless you are a government, for that matter. I'm not talking of the government of Sri Lanka. You don't just bring in capacity like what we did in the port of Hambantota. If you are a prudent investor, you will always look at the demand factor and then bring in the capacity that is required. And the point that you have to once again understand is that the investment that took place in Hambantota is totally different to the investment that took place in the port of Colombo in regard to CICT or SAGT. These are two different parallels.
We saw even the South Harbour terminal handling 680,000 containers in the year 2014 alone, which saw a capacity growth of 14% for the Colombo port, because CICT took over operations and handled operations, Dr. Parakrama. So there would be good news in Hambantota as well in the years to come. Won't that be the case?
Exactly. This is what I have been trying to tell you, that we have a shortage of deep draft berths. The reason why the volume zoomed at CICT is not only due to the efficiency, but also due to the fact that SAGT and JCT cannot accommodate large vessels. That's the reason.
Dr. Disanayake, now Minister Samanasinghe, following the deal, had said that Sri Lanka has addressed geopolitical concerns. Can you explain how the security mechanism will work under this deal?
Yes, we have brought in clauses into the concession agreement which is very clear. Just to briefly let you know, one is on the government of Sri Lanka shall have the sole power and the sole authority over activities involving in military personnel, type of activities of military nature, whether on land, in air or in sea on shore or offshore within the territory of Sri Lanka. Right? Like in Colombo, like in Trincomalee, like in Galle, if you have a military activity taking place, or for that matter personnel coming in, that clearance should come from the government of Sri Lanka. Even by using your word, even if a Chinese military personnel vessel is calling, that approval will have to be given by the government of Sri Lanka, not by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. That is what happens currently. And national security, we have an oversight committee which will be convened by the Ports Authority, consisting of personnel from Sri Lanka Navy, Sri Lanka Police, and the Secretary of the Ministry of Defence. And they will be responsible for managing the security within and outside the port property area. And so these are some of the things that we have brought into the concession agreement. Besides, transactions will be subject to all applicable laws in Sri Lanka, such as Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act, Merchant Shipping Act, Customs Ordinance, Immigration Regulations, Licensing of the Shipping Agencies Act, and other applicable national laws and relevant international treaties and conventions.
One of the concerns raised is that...
One final question, by the way, yes, very quickly.
Yeah, there are two parts to the final
Right, okay,
question.
so very quickly.
Yeah, one of the concerns is having a 30% stake. Can you have total control over security? And how did you negotiate the workers, when you dealt with the Chinese company? What are the parameters that you took into consideration when dealing with the staff who are already there?
Well, we brought in a separate clause to cover that area, where we will obviously, these two Sri Lankan companies will look at whatever requirements are, and obviously we will obviously give preference to the employees who are currently there, and they'll be dealt with the Sri Lankan laws, Sri Lankan labor laws, and we have brought that into the concession agreement itself. So there's no displacement taking place. In fact, before the concession agreement was signed, I personally went to Hambantota. I met up with 487 people who are currently working there, and I took them to the concession agreement, and they were asking questions for that matter. As you know, the entire port of Hambantota was blocked some time ago, but I went there, and then when I took them through, they understood the circumstances that has driven us to go into a public-private partnership. And they were asking questions on compensation. I said, why are you asking questions on compensation? The whole idea is to absorb all of you. And the question of compensation comes in only if we cannot absorb you. When I say if, mean the two Sri Lankan companies and not the Chinese.
What are these two Sri Lankan companies, Dr.
One is Hambantota International Port Group, other one is Hambantota International Port Services Company, and
both of which are coming under the Sri Lanka Ports Authority.
Well, Sri Lankan SLPA has shareholding in one company. With indirect shareholding, it works out to 50.7%, and in this company, the chairman of that company will be from the Sri Lanka Ports Authority.
No. So the holding company or the majority shareholder would be Sri Lanka Ports Authority.
In one company.
In one company.
In one company with direct, indirect will be 50.7. And in the other company, as I said, like in Colombo, like with SAGT and CICT, 1585.
Have you chosen those companies in question already?
Those two companies have been established, Sri Lankan companies.
I mean the board of directors?
No, we are still not, because we have to enter into a shareholder agreement to do that.
And what is the role and task? Do you have a general idea what these two?
Role.
Yeah, what these two companies in terms of services?
The one that I spoke of, where SLPA will have a shareholding of 50.7 direct, indirect, will be involved in all marine services like pilotage, navigation, security, that is domestic security, and berthing, unberthing. All those functions will come under that company. The second company is a terminal company like SAGT, like CICT. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parakram Dissanayake, for your thoughts, Mr. Rohan Maskoral as well as Professor Rohan Samarjiva. We go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. We'll hear the final remarks of the three gentlemen who are seated on the hot seat today. Stay connected. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I start off the final round with Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. Professor Samarjiva, what is next? The next 10 to 15 years. Obviously, there is going to be an election, that is for sure, in a few years' time. Obviously, they will have to carry forward with what they agreed upon with these companies in question, in particularly in Hambantota. What's next for us?
Surely you need to, I mean, when you're talking economic policy and you're talking infrastructure, you need to get away from fixating on elections. Right? These are long-term investments. That's the reason why we enter into these kinds of legal agreements and shareholder agreements and so on. Just let's look at SAGT was entered into. Sri Lanka is one of the major public-private partnerships. It was entered into under President Kumartunga. There have been many elections since then. Did we change the rules? No. And I think the more important point is what Dr. Parakram Dissanayake has been saying. We have to understand the dynamics of the world marine transportation industry. There, the people who are setting the rules, who are setting the pace, are these big mega alliances. And what we have done is we have got ourselves in a position where our ports can do well. You know, we are very, very pleased to talk about our ports being wonderful. And I know, I've talked to the Indians and Indian port ministry people, and they always say, Rohan, we use your ports as the benchmarks. We can't reach your benchmarks. But then you really should look at the recent World Bank study, which compared the efficiency of all the ports. And we are way behind Singapore, right? We look good against the Indian ports, but we don't look as good against the Southeast Asian and Far Eastern ports. So what we need to do is, Sri Lanka has got a natural advantage in transportation and logistics. How do we build on it? That is the real question. Not worrying about the next election or things like that. What we need to get is, I mean, there's a statement that one politician once told me, because I too have worked for different political parties as a technocrat. And I said, now I'm working on the other side. He said, Professor, infrastructure has no politics. Infrastructure has no politics. Infrastructure must not have politics. If you start infusing infrastructure issues with politics, we are in disaster territory. Because these are long-term investments. We need long-term strategies. And what I believe is that there is a wonderful opportunity with the Bay of Bengal. We are in a changing Asia. That's what a lot of people don't think about. We are still thinking of some kind of static pie. The pie is expanding. And we are well positioned to ride with this and enjoy the expanding pie. And that, I think, is what we need to think about.
So what you're saying is, at the end of the day, Professor Samarjiva, the pie is expanding and Sri Lanka can have a share.
Can, if we do things right. And I think getting a major player, as Dr. Dissanayake continues to say, getting a major player involved. I think Maersk at one point invested in the SAGT.
Precisely.
Right? Yeah. You need to bring these people in. Singapore at one point did not want to allow the Chinese to own a terminal there, but they couldn't hold on because the dynamics have changed. The whole industry has changed. Right? So I think we are positioned well. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. I think we should stop quibbling. This is done. The deal is done. Now, how do we move forward?
Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. I now move my attention to Mr. Rohan Korala, CEO of the Shippers Academy of Colombo. The deal is done now. We have to start thinking as to what we will do next. What should be the next steps, Mr. Korala?
In my mind, very clearly, Sri Lanka's position in the Indian Ocean is absolutely unique to be a regional or a global distribution center. Now, ports and shipping is just one aspect of it. And so we have 2 ports. We can develop Trincomalee also depending on the demand for there. But we need to go backward integration, that is to develop the logistics industry. So we need what's called a maritime ecosystem built here. We need, I insist that we continue to need more foreign direct investment from global players. Not only Maersk, other terminal operators, other backward integrated companies of warehousing, various aspects relating to transportation and logistics. we are way behind in global terms, as Professor said, the port comparison, World Bank report, South Asia, we are also way behind. So there's a lot more to do efficiency in the port sector and also in the logistics industry. During the last regime, during the last part of the regime, we managed to get something called the Commercial Hub Act by amending the Finance Act of 12 of 2013, where total free zones are created. In fact, Hambantota is declared as a complete free zone under the Commercial Hub Act. So the two new companies Dr. Dissanayake is talking about can look at the backward integration through the commercial hub activities as well. So I am sure the Chinese investors, other investors, will look at these two ports in Sri Lanka, and we have the right location, as we always talk, but location won't be enough. We need to do the doing business reforms as well as building the proper ecosystem with what I believe is owner-operator presence in this country. Sri Lanka needs headquarters of shipping lines. Sri Lanka needs headquarters of various logistics companies. They are the people who have the capital. They are the people who decide where to put the money, not us.
Mr. Maskorala, I always like to ask you a political question because it's quite interesting to get your thoughts on this. Getting FDIs, getting these big companies to come and invest in Sri Lanka, given the current political climate in Sri Lanka right now, what we're facing, can we do it? Because 2016 we saw a very paltry amount of money coming in as FDIs, and even 2017 is not satisfactory. 2018, 2019, given the current political climate in Sri Lanka, would we be able to attract these big players?
That's a good question, because political stability, political messages are very important for big players to put their money, because they look at how their money would be working in a particular destination, and we are not the only country that is going and marketing for this kind of products from international investors. There is money outside there. But yes, that is a question. So it's the responsibility of the President, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Ministers to give clear signals outside. Now this is a clear signal. Government has finally taken a decision and done this, right? The port is there, now the deal is there. So Prime Minister talks about the airport also, that he is going to sort it out. Let them do it and show that, okay, we are going ahead, so that the investors know that there is some kind of direction that the government is going. And also look at the free trade agreements. I think they are doing a good job in that, trying to get a couple of free trade agreements with major economies. One is further integration with the Indian free trade agreement, and the other one is the China, and also we probably go through one with Singapore, and now there's one following up discussions in Bangladesh and also in Japan. So these are, I think, right directions. If we can create that environment, GSP Plus was taken, the fisheries ban was taken off. All these are positive things which people have completely probably forgotten.
Thank you very much.
So yes and no. On one side, yes, we are creating the climate, but at the same time, this political uncertainty and political...
At what cost is it coming?
Yeah, it's coming at a certain cost, yes,
Thank
and
you
it's a
very much.
problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rohan Maskorala. Professor Rohan Samarjeeva said, it's done, the deal is now there, we have to now think ahead. And Mr. Rohan Maskorala says that the port is there, the deal is there, and what is now important is the political climate. We have to ensure that we forge ahead. Dr. Parakrama Dissanayake, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, I have two questions for you. The first question, of course, is that before taking up office as the Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, you were also the CEO and Chairman of a private company which was dealing with logistics. My question to you is very simple. As an individual who has been part and parcel of private companies, how do you see Sri Lanka's future? Do you think that the private sector in Sri Lanka will be driving growth, or would it be the companies that are coming from outside would be driving growth in the country?
I think obviously you have an environment where the private sector organizations have to drive, but in large infrastructure projects you have to have the support of the government as well. And that's why that you have these public-private partnerships coming into play, and with private sector-driven management. Now, in regard to this investment, at times, being a Sri Lanka, I'm also baffled. Here, this is the largest ever FDI. Largest ever FDI coming into Sri Lanka. And why are we talking about whether it's coming from India, whether it's coming from China, or whether it's coming from Pakistan? The biggest ever FDI. And then besides, this investment is not coming into Colombo. Why are we so Colombo-centric? When the investment is coming into a place like Hambantota, wouldn't that area develop? Are we not craving for investments outside Sri Lanka? And this investment is 1.12 billion. Why are we not embracing this investment?
Dr. Dissanayake, one final question to you. Take off your hat as the chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority for a moment now, and tell me, if you wanted any changes in the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, as a former CEO of a private company, what changes do you envisage? And have you been able to make those changes?
Well, I am 8 weeks into the job. If you look at what we were able to achieve, it was only because of the leadership that we currently have. And change is possible as long as you have the right leadership. And in the ports and shipping sector, I think we should be thankful that we have a great leader in our minister.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parakram Dissanayake, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjeev. It's always nice to have you on board, the founding chair of Learnasia. And of course, Mr. Rohan Maskorala, CEO of the Shippers Academy of Colombo. We tell him to come on the show, and there's never a no. Thank you very much, Mr. Maskorala. I think it's important and imperative to acknowledge your presence on the show, because every single time we want you to come. Charita, it has not been that difficult to get Mr. Maskorala on the show, is it? So thank you very much, Mr. Maskorala, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Charita. Thank you very much, Attorney at Law Sonali Vanagabaduga. Thank you very much, Chaturanga, for joining us this evening. I take a few lines from what Dr. Parakram Dissanayake said at the end of the last comments. He said that it does not matter from wherever we get the investments, as long as we get the right investment to the right place. And then he also said that he was baffled why people are making remarks about the investment that we've got, because at the end of the day, Sri Lanka is looking at growth, Sri Lanka is looking at prosperity. And he also said that what is important is leadership. And now the question mark is, do we have it? What is happening right now in Sri Lanka? Next week on the show, we'll be talking about the 2nd of August, if the foreign minister, who was then the finance minister of Sri Lanka, goes to the Presidential Commission on the Bond Inquiry. I promise you, we have an in-depth and extensive program on the 7th of August, which is a POYA. Don't forget to tune in to Face the Nation. We'll have the full story for you with some entertainment as well, I promise you on that. With that, I finish tonight's show with a quote, as I always do. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Have you done it? I leave it for you. Decide. Take care. Good night.